Hello, welcome to the Color Collage series of classes that we're doing to assemble this block of the month at Always in Stitches in Noblesville, Indiana. My name's Cappy. Peter's behind the camera. Say hey, Peter.
Hey, y'all.
Hey, y'all. So if you signed up with this in our store, you know that we have a class once a month to walk through it. But sometimes people have responsibilities that keep them from being able to come to class. So we offer this as a YouTube opportunity as well. You will need to have bought the pattern and the kit from some store to be able to participate, not necessarily ours. But if you come across this and you're like, oh, I'd love to make that, we could probably put you up with a kit. So if you're watching this video and you think it's a fun project you'd want to do, give us a call. We'll fix you up. And Peter will put the information on how to do that up on the magical little screen because he can do that. But this is called Color Collage. It's by Rink. We are in month 4, believe it or not. And so we're ready to do the block that it says for month 4. And one of the things I'm loving about this is rather than assigning like A, B, C, D to the different fabrics, she just tells you the name of the fabric, and they're so beautiful. You can tell each one by the name what it is. So for this block, for this month, you're going to be using what's called the Gold Furrow, which is kind of a greeny gold color. It's very pretty. And you're going to use that again. So when you cut pieces out of this, you're going to have some stuff left, which you should have stuff left. You shouldn't completely use this up. You're going to use this again in block 8 later on. So don't cut it all up and think, oh, I'm done with it. Store it away. You also use what's called blue tiling. I'm not real sure. This seems swirly to me. I would call it blue swirlies, but she calls it blue tiling. And again, this one you will need some left because you're going to use it again. So don't cut it all up and think you're done. And then this one is called Aqua Dewdrops. Now I kind of get this one. This looks like little drops of rain, maybe, and water flowing. And another one that you won't use again, so don't cut it all up. But this Buttercup, which you get just a little fat quarter in, this is the only time you use it. So if you cut it all up and you don't have any left, don't panic, it's fine. You should use it all in this block. So you can see this is about what I had left. So that's cool. But the other pieces, you're going to have some left. So let's talk about our cutting instructions. I'm not going to give you dimensions because you have bought the pattern hopefully from somebody, and so we protect the copyright of the pattern by not giving that information out on YouTube. But she does tell you to cut I would cut the gold fabric exactly the way that she tells you to cut it. No, sorry, this one. Cut this one exactly the way she tells you to cut it because you're going to need triangles, and it's going to make little triangles like this. So you cut squares and then you cut those squares in half to make your triangles. And then the blue you cut in 3 different size squares. Actually, nope, picked up the wrong one. This one you cut into 2 different size squares. So there's 2 sizes of squares that you're going to cut in that. Cut it just the way she says. And then in this one, this is the one that I want to make a little change on in this blue tiling. She gives you a 3/8 dimension on one of them. And for the B square is what it calls it, for the B square. And it's a half square triangle that you're going to put together. And so 3/8 of an inch is hard for me to find on my ruler. So I like to go up to a half. And so on the Aqua Dewdrops, on this one where she tells you to cut a strip with a 3/8 inch dimension, go up to the 1/2 inch because it gives you a little more wiggle room when you're cutting your square triangles, and it makes it more accurate. So just go up a half to a half instead of 3/8. But cut the rest of that just like it says. And then this goldenrod color, we're going to have the same thing where you cut some A squares, cut them exactly as it's written, and then the B squares, some of them you're going to cut into half square triangles, and some of them you're going to use to make half square triangles. So that sounds a little funny. But some of them you're going to use already cut in half, and they have to be exactly the dimension she says. So you're supposed to cut 3 strips to make the B squares. Only cut one of the strips at the 1/2 inch dimension. If you have the pattern, this is going to make sense. If it says cut 3 strips, and it ends in 3/8 on this one, and cut one of the strips 2.5 inches, but cut the other 2 strips the 3/8 inch dimension, because when you cut it, you have to have it the right size. If you cut it a half, it's going to not fit on your square. So 2 strips at the 3/8 dimension and 1 strip at the 1/2 inch dimension. So just to make it a little easier, a little more confusing. If you have questions, just email me. I can tell you how to do it. But with half square triangles, I always like to have a little extra to squitch it in. And the block that we're making, this is what you're going to make. And so this is where I was talking about. We use that one that's a 1/2 inch dimension here to make the half square triangles. But this one that we cut into a triangle has to be that 3/8 dimension. Otherwise, it won't fit properly on here. So that's why I'm telling you that. But this is the square. I love it. I think it's a fun square. It's not too hard to make. I actually, once you get the fabric cut, I made one block in probably, I don't know, 45 minutes at the most it took to sew the entire block together. The first thing we make is half square triangles. And, I'm using my tape. If you don't have this tape, you need to get some. This machine has a position where it puts the needle over to a 1/4 inch piecing, and it automatically sets the stitch length and everything for me. So I've lined my tape up with that, and I'm actually not even using a 1/4 inch foot. I'm trying to use a little different foot each time so you can see, but I'm using just the standard straight stitch foot with this, because with the needle in the position that is a 1/4 inch, it's actually a 1/4 inch from the edge of the foot, so it naturally sets that up. I really encourage you to get the feet out in your machine and don't always just use the one foot. There's options, so use them. Anyway, so I had to reposition my tape to make sure that the needle dropped right where the red line was. So that's why you have a roll of this tape, because you're going to stick it and re-stick it. And now my red line is exactly in line with where my needle drops. And you do that by taking your ruler, dropping your needle, putting a ruler against that needle, and then making sure that line is right on that line, right on the edge of the ruler, okay? So it's not too hard to do, you just have to do it. So let's start with the half square triangles. I think we've made a bazillion. How many bazillions of half square triangles have you made in your lifetime, Peter?
Not many.
Really?
I'm still a spring chick.
Oh, come on, you've made more than that. I know you have.
I'm young.
Oh, whatever. Well, half square triangles are truly the absolute, like the basis of everything every quilter does, I think. But it's made by putting these 2 squares together, and I'll get 2 half square triangles out of these 2 squares. So what I do is I just line that up, get my thread out of the way. And because I'm using this tape, rather than sewing right down the middle of this piece, I'm going to put my point on the 1/4 inch line. From the red to the black is a 1/4 inch, and I'm going to place the top of the point a 1/4 inch over from that where the needle is, which there's kind of a little indent on my thing. I know right where it's at. And I'm going to sew, and then that gives me my 1/4 inch from the center, which is what I need. Now I'm going to strip piece these. I'm only going to do one just to show you, but if I was doing these, I would just do all of them, and I would strip piece them. I would put one after the other after the other. And then I'm going to turn around, I'm going to do the other side. And it's the same thing. I just put the point on the 1/4 inch here and up there, and then that gives me my full 1/4 inch seam that I need when I cut it. We've done this in an earlier video, so this shouldn't be brain surgery at this point. It should be pretty simple for you. And then I'm going to cut down the center of that piece right there. That's going to give me my 1/4 inch on each side. So let me just show you real quick how we do that. Then I take and run my ruler here, cut down that 1/4 inch, and there's my 2 half square triangles. Now, I'm going to press this open. She says in her directions, I'm not pressing it, I'm pressing it to the side. She says to press to the dark side. So I'm just going to set that seam like that so it gets it hot. That kind of lets the threads melt into each other. And then I'm going to open this puppy up. Because the way this block is made, they don't nest into each other, it's really not a huge deal which way they go. But sometimes it really matters. In this case, she says press to the dark side. I can't tell which one's the dark. Which one would you call the dark side on that, Peter?
The teal.
The teal. All right. Well, we'll do the other one the other way. I have a hard time seeing which one's the dark side sometimes. Maybe it's just my color.
It's 20% darker.
Is it 20% darker? There you go. Okay. There you go. That's an exact measurement.
Exact, you guys.
Exact. Not 21 or 19.
20.
It's exactly 20% darker. Got it. They actually make, you know, they have little glasses you can put on to look, and take a black and white photo too sometimes will help you decide. So, and you can, because in a black and white photo you can really see the color distinctions. So now I'm going to make that a 2.5. I'm going to make it the right, I'm going to make it the dimension she tells me. And when you're doing that, you have a line here on your ruler that goes on that angle, and then you just square it up. And because I've given myself some extra, I can square that up just perfect. And then I'm using my little spinny mat, if you notice. She is my friend. I use this mat all the time. It just stays on my cutting table. I have a big one too, but this little one just is the right size. So now I've squared that up, and it's exactly the dimension I wanted it to. And you see what little pieces I got off there. If I had made the 3/8 dimension rather than the half, this square would have had to come out exactly perfect. And I'm not that great of a stitcher, so I give myself a little wiggle room on my half square triangles and always go just a 1/8 of an inch bigger. Or, and because 3/8 of an inch is hard to find on a ruler, let's just be honest. I mean, I know where it's at, but I just think it's, I don't know, I think it's easier to go where the darker lines are on your ruler. Okay, so I make my half square triangles. That's the first step. And you make, I don't know, probably 16 of those. But they're pretty. I love how that gold pops off of that. I love the color combination. And then the next piece you're going to make in these is one that has these little half, this is why those half square triangles you had to cut exactly to the dimensions she said, because now you're going to sew these on the sides. And geometry wise, this always confuses me. I want to sew them on like that for some reason. I don't know, my brain's crazy, but it really goes like that, so you get this corner piece. So typically what I do when I sew these on, I like to start, here we go, here's a half square triangle. I like to start, and it goes, so here we go, I got myself confused. It goes that way. Yes? Yes, so it goes like that. That's your square edge, and it hangs down here. And you have to have this little tip down here because that makes your 1/4 inch work right there. So when I fold that on, I like to start sewing in this where there's a seam. It's more solid than if I try to sew that tip. When you put that in, it tends to want to slide around. So I'll put it that way. Yeah, it's falling out of my hand. There we go. I'll put it just like that. And I'm going to start sewing there. That way I get a little bit of weight in my, under my needle. This has some substantial layers to it so it doesn't slide away. And again, I'm using my tape, so I'm lining up now. It's actually the side of my foot and the side of this tape. And I'm going to start sewing. Okay. Now, this is another one you can just do row after row after row. I can just chain piece those on and just keep sewing them one after the other. I hit the thread cutter, but I wouldn't have had to, because I can just stick another one underneath there and go again. Oh, it still caught it. All right. Now I've got that on that one side. Now I don't want to cut this tail off yet. See that little tail hanging out? I am not going to cut that off yet. But I am going to press this open, and I think or not open, but to the yellow side. I think she shows you to press it that way, but I want you to press it to the yellow because when I'm sewing through this, I want to see where the point of that triangle is. And if I press it this way, it covers up my point on my triangle. So press that out like that. See how I pressed that one out? So let's put the next side on, and then the next side goes on just like that. I see I have to flip it around. I get lost. So there's that piece. It's going to go just like that. And again, I can start where there's some weight to the fabric. And I had some of these prepared, so you didn't see me press that because it was already pressed. And then you get this fun little bow tie kind of down at the bottom. See my little bow tie down there? When I open that up, that's what I have. And see, then this distance from here to here is 1/4 of an inch. And that's why I'm saying I want you to press this open so I can see my point when I get ready to sew through there. And so you make 16 of these, just like that. Let me sew a few here and we'll get where we're caught up with ourselves. These go together pretty quick. Like I said, I think I got this done in, I don't know, an evening. I gotta press this real quick. What quilt are you working on, Peter?
None.
None? You're knitting.
No
right now.
quilt.
You're getting ready for the spinning competition.
I'm knitting socks. I'm spinning yarn. I'm working on the warp for the spinning competition.
Yeah, you're on a different place right now. That's the fun thing about our craft. I think we can do so many things. See, I gotta do this. Can you tell this is hard for me? That's so funny. I do so many things.
I lay it out first before I sew those together.
Yeah, it's just...
Because it only takes me a second just to make sure.
Right. Just to make sure I'm in the right place.
I do the same thing.
Yeah. So now, with this one, I'm not going to start there. I'm actually going to start from the other corner, but that's fine. I still have some bulk under there, and that's what I'm getting at. I don't like to start sewing on just a single layer of fabric. It's a good opportunity for stuff to get tangled. There we go. And see, the cool part is I can also know that I'm right because when I put this piece on here, it's just so cool how this works. So when I lay that piece on there where it belongs, and I start sewing, where you sew is the little indentation is 1/4 inch in, so I know I did it right. I like that affirmation when I'm sewing. It's like, yes, I did it the way I was supposed to. This goes here. I got my stylus. You guys are watching me sew. You know it becomes like my second hand. Or my... It's the finger that if it gets caught under the sewing machine, I'm not going to be sad. I sew over it, it won't hurt as bad. Alright. So now I've made 4 of these. 1, 2, 3. And the 4th one's over here on the other side. I've made 4 of these. And you can see all of them have this space between here and here that's 1/4 inch, because you got to have that to make it. And they have the 1/4 inch out here. See, there's the 1/4 inch out there for when it sews to the next piece. So I'm going to press them. Press, press. Just touch them with the heat just to settle that seam. And then, now, like I said, she said to press these towards each other, but I'm not. I'm pressing them out because I want to be able to visually see that point. So see how I did that? These are all, and the other part is when you have those triangles like that, that's a bias edge. It really wants to stretch, so you have to be careful when you're pressing not to pull on it and press it out and stretch it, because if you do, you're going to regret that, because it distorts your piece. But that's a bias cut piece, and I mean, if I tug on that, it really stretches it. All right, and then I'm going to cut these little wings off, these little bow ties that are so stinking cute. And I'm just going to lay that down here and take my cutter and cut those wings off. It just makes it easier to sew if you don't have the wings sticking out. No more wings. Looks like a little bird mouth. little bead. Okay. And then now what we do is these squares that you cut into triangles, we're going to sew those on each one of these halves. And that makes your corners. Now, in a perfect world, this triangle matches that triangle exactly. And guess what? We're close. So what I like to do is I make sure my points line up here. That's kind of the most important point. And then pull that down to where those points are pretty close. But just in cutting, sometimes you get just a little bit off, but that's okay. We're going to make it work. And you're going to see why I wanted that open. Stylus. You know, at home I have like 3 of these styluses because I've always got one in the wrong spot. So I'm going to lay that down and make sure. Now I know those pinner people would pin it, but I'm just going to lay it flat. There we go. And what I'm going to do when I get to this point right here, where that point is, I'm going to make sure I sew basically just a thread off of that point. So the point comes to here, and I'm just going to be right where that meets. Right there is where I want to sew. Let me slow down and see. I don't know if you can see that or not, but that's really slow. Wow. Boom. Yeah, so I hit that dead on. So I'm going to sew all 4 of these together, or all 3 of these together, and then that's going to make your corners. I like this block. I think the last one we did was the same as the month before, so it seems like forever since we kind of had a video. Now see that one, the triangle matches exactly. Because the 2 previous months were the same block, they were just different colorways. So I didn't have to make a video last month. I was like, just go back and watch the month before. It was lazy for us. And it worked out well because I had some stuff going on. I couldn't really be here. Alright, here we go. And again. This fabric kind of grips against itself too, so that's nice. It holds itself. Yeah, when you've got those points going like that, they tend to be a little squiggly. We caught it. That's why I use my stylus. There's a purple thing. You can use a purple thing but it's a little flexible. It's got some bend to it. So I don't care for it quite as much. I tend to use this one more because it's firmer. Alright, now we're going to press these open. This table that we're working on is kind of, we found them.
It's the bomb.com.
It is the bomb. We bought them at Home Depot.
Home Depot.
Home Depot.
Shout out to Home Depot.
Yeah, shout out to Home Depot. And they are the best little tables because they're adjustable in height and everything.
I think they're called Husky.
Husky tables, yeah. And they're super, super nice. Okay. So now I have...
They even got built-in do-it-yourself hydraulics.
Yeah, they do. You just have to...
You just crank the wheel yourself.
So we're going to make 4 of these, and I'm going to... There's the finished one you can see.
So cute.
Isn't it cute? I love the color combinations in this. She's just genius on color.
She really is. She did a great job colorizing this. I'm so impressed.
If you want
to know what scale is about, make this quilt.
Right, yeah. She does a beautiful job of putting things together. Now I square this up. She gives you a dimension that this square should be. And so I'm squaring it up to get that shape exactly. And you need to square your blocks every time you sew them. If they're too far off, you know, I don't know, a 1/16 of an inch I can usually fudge. But if I get into, you know, it's like an 1/8 or 1/4 of an inch smaller or bigger or whatever than what it is. If it's bigger, a lot of times you can shave it off. If it's smaller, sometimes you're going to unstitch and restitch to make it right. But these are good. These came out pretty good. The other thing, when you're doing diagonal bias sewing like this, a scant 1/4 inch is usually better than a generous 1/4 inch, especially because we're not pressing these open. When you press when you press to a side or the other side, there's a little bit of a fold in there that is not there when you press open. So it does change it a little bit. So you might want to do what I would call a scant 1/4 inch. Okay, so for each block you make 4 of those. So that means we're making 4 blocks. You're going to make 16 of these squares. But for this one, we just made the 4 we needed. There you go. And then the next block
They look like little goldfish.
Oh, they do. Wah, 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 wah. I know that. They do look like little goldfish. The next one that we do is the other blocks in this quilt are all the same. It's the stitch and flip where you put it on the side and you on the corners and you flip it. The center one, you use 4 colors in the center and you stitch and flip. For the other ones, it's 2 here and 2 here, and you stitch and flip. So this block is so repetitive, but it's kind of fun to do. The trick is, the center one is just all 4 of the outsides are the same, and that gives you that. But it gives you a square and a square, which some people don't like. I like the square and square myself. I think it's a fun block to make. But when you sew these, again, you can chain piece them. And so I'll do like the blue corner, and then opposite is going to be the yellow corner, okay? But then when I go back, and I'm going to cut and press those, and then when I go back, then I'm going to put a blue and a yellow opposite again. So I just need to be sure I follow true to that design, or I'm going to regret it. So you start out with just a square, and let's say I sew the yellow on first. And you just want to line, the important part of this block is to be sure this side and that side are exactly in alignment. Because if I stick that out too far and sew across here, it won't work. Or if I go in too far like that and sew across, it won't work. So it's real important to be dead on that corner point right there, and that these match exactly on the sides. So much so, I'm even inclined to put a clip right there. So making sure these points match here and here, and the point matches right on that corner, I'm going to clip that in space, because that's going to hang out. It's not going to be under my needle. And again, I'm back to, now I'm going to sew, and I'm using my tape. I put my point, part of the reason I pull this thread back, which I'm using a gray thread, but it's kind of hard to see against a gray base. But when I put that thread back, I can see exactly where my needle's going to drop. And I want to be, if you're looking at this piece, I kind of want to sew not like right on that point, but just a thread's width over from there and start sewing. So when I fold it, it actually has a little room. You'll see what I mean. There we go, dead on. And then I'm using my red line here to keep track of where I'm at. So I'm going to sew, that's how you sew these corners on. You always sew those corners over. To make sure that I've not violated or made this too short, I fold this over and make sure that it looks exactly the same. Like this lines up exactly where I'm going to fold and press that. Now if I fold that over and I get a gap, then I know I have to take this off and put it on again. Shows better probably in this piece because they're 2 different colors. That solid color probably didn't show as well. So when I fold this over, we'll see if this one, I haven't checked this one. So when I fold that over, see there? I don't see anything of the fabric behind it. They still line up perfectly. So that tells me I'm going to retain that perfect corner there. If when I fold that I get like something wonkadoo like that, where I can see this white coming through, or if it would fold all the way over and it's on the other way, I'm going to rip that out and do it again, because you want to keep your square square. And it's hard to do if they're not that way. So anyway, I'm going to sew these, and I usually do opposite corners. So I'll do the opposite corners, and you're going to do 16 of these as well. And I would do all 16 at the same time. I wouldn't stop and go like I'm doing here with one at a time. But I've got to do it this way so you can see how they're made. There we go. And so I'm going to do the 2 blue ones on this corner, the 2 yellow ones on this corner. And what that means is opposites blue, yellow, opposites blue, yellow. It's real easy to accidentally do opposites blue, opposites yellow. That won't work. Don't make that mistake. Ask me how I know. All right, so this is going to be a yellow. So I would do all my blue sides, and I'm going to do all my yellow ones, and I would go back. And when you do 16 in a line, it's much more efficient than doing it this way. This is a yellow. And then I just turn that one. That's how I get my chain. So I can put this one right up next to it. Now, before I put the other corners on, I do have to press it. You can't just sew them on all, like I couldn't turn right around and sew this one on because it won't work. You have to press them. So I'm going to go press these and cut these. And let's see how that works. So I have my 4 squares for this particular block. I would have 16. And I'm going to just cut that off. So this is where I laid it on there. Cut that off. And then this will fold back and make that corner. Here's the same thing. I pre-pressed that one. And I'm going to cut that off. Just like that. And there are people who take these little triangles and make quilts out of them. I'm not that person. So here it is where it's sewn on. I'm just going to cut my 1/4 inch off. You're guaranteed a 1/4 inch seam when you cut it after you sew it. Okay, so now I'm going to press these. Isn't that fun? I like square and a square.
I like square and a square because that's what made me really good at piecing. Was once I had to do square and a square. There was a little mini quilt that I did for the shop, and it had a square and a square border.
Oh boy!
And so
how many did you get to make?
I made, I think, 32 square and square blocks to make the border on the mini quilt, and that made me really good just doing all those, you know, and making sure you get plenty of practice. Let me just put it that way.
Well, and what do you think made it easier as far as making them? What's
repetition and made it easier, because if you examine your blocks as you go, then you know what adjustments to make, so that way everything is really, really good.
Right, yeah.
And you can tell once you make it, like right now you're measuring to see if you're a 1/4 inch. You get so good, you eyeball it and you know. And then when you're sewing it, you know, like you know how you were given instructions on how to press it, so that way you can see the point. I mean, you know where you have to sew even on that point to get a perfect point when it's attached to the block.
Right.
So it's just magical, I think.
It is, and I think you're right. I'm glad you said that. Repetition, repetition, repetition. By the time you make, 24 half square triangles, you're going to get the hang of it. And by the time you make, 24 of these, you're going to get the hang of it. And don't be afraid to rip it out. Start over. It's just fabric. The more you rip it out and re-sew it, the more value you have.
And I found out too, when I was making mine, I knew I didn't have to be perfect. I looked at that project as an opportunity to improve.
Right.
I wasn't aiming for perfect. I wasn't aiming for, these points have to, be exact. I just said, you know what? I just need to improve. And then when I got done, I felt like I improved, so it was a win.
Well, and
it's not perfect, but
not.
I'm happy with it.
I think sometimes, unfortunately, people get paralyzed by the fact that it's not perfect. I will rip something out twice. This is my rule. Apply it to your life or not. I will rip something out twice if I'm not happy with it. But if after I do it, rip it twice and sew it together, it's still not perfect, then I figure there's a reason it's not supposed to be perfect. And I need to just let it go. Because you're right, they're not meant to be perfect. Now, it's important to learn the techniques that potentially can make it perfect. I think there's a lot to learn about the right way and the wrong way to do things. But at the end of the day, this is supposed to be fun, and it's supposed to give me joy. And if the perfection process paralyzes me, then then it's not fun anymore. And that's the goal. If you want to be perfect at it, go do cross stitch. Ooh, sorry, not to pick on cross stitch people. We have a standing joke around here because I'm not a cross stitcher, and it's because it's just too precise. I'm more freeform than that. So, and what is it? If you ride by 20 feet away on a galloping horse and you can't see it, then it doesn't count, right? Okay, so I've just used clips to hold those in place to kind of make sure. And then when I sew this is where you get that overlap that creates that 1/4 inch. So it's kind of sweet to see that come together. I'm like you. I like the geometry of quilting. I think that's what's fun about it.
But I do want to point out there, though, let me say this before you sew, that if you do want to perfect your skills, like on this block, and you feel like you're close to getting it, but you just aren't quite, you're unsure of maybe like what the dynamics are, you can bring that block in and, Cappy will show you. Like, how many times have I had you explain like binding to me? I think you had to explain binding to me on 3 or 4 separate occasions, to where it clicked and I'm like, oh my gosh, now I have this. It's like handwriting. I don't even have to think about it.
Oh yeah. And I think, sometimes we're intimidated to ask for help because we see somebody who we feel like, oh gosh, they do it so well. Well, they do it so well because they started out at the beginning, and those people sometimes forget how to go back to the beginning, to kindergarten, Everybody starts somewhere. Don't be afraid to ask questions. And if that person won't answer your question, find someone who will. Our staff, I'm always raving about our amazing staff. We've got some incredible talent in this building. And I promise you that if you come in and say, I'm having trouble with XYZ, can you show me how to do that? They'll be like, sure. Now, let me say this. If they've got 12 people in line waiting to have fabric cut, and there's 14, if the shop's super busy, it may be one of these things where they say, could you come back at this time or whatever? And we offer classes. Oh my gosh, have we got classes? Come and take a class. We've got a gal, her name's Kathy Zook, who teaches some amazing quilting classes. They do small projects. And most people are like, well, no, I just want to learn how to quilt. Well, here's how you learn to quilt. You take a class.
Small projects.
You work on a small project, and you get successful with that small project, and then you can start a quilt. It's like, make a table runner.
We need to talk about those scissors. What is that?
Oh, these are just fabulous.
Are those? What are those?
I wasn't bringing good scissors, and so I decided to bring. Does this scream my name?
Hey, those go with your, you have glasses like that, don't you?
I do.
Party glasses?
I have party glasses like this. So yeah, these are my good little scissors. This is a little scissor fob that I made at a retreat one time that I love. And yeah, so.
Got you some flamingo scissors.
I got me some flamingos. I'm not going to lose these, baby. These are not going away. They stay found. Although my cat wants to play with them,
Oh, because it's got the danglies.
Oh, those boys. I tell you, Smokey and Copper, they're so bad.
Key fob.
They're not allowed in my sewing room unless I'm home. And so this morning when I was packing all this stuff up to bring it to the shop, and I opened the door, and they were like, oh, she's going in the sewing room. And they went running in there, and I was like, boys, no, not today. And their poor little sad faces. But I can't leave them in there without me because they just have a heyday. They're like, oh, buttons and fabric, and, if they were real life people, they would definitely be sewing.
I saw on Instagram yesterday this girl, I think it's called Sewing with Chickens. That might even be her name. But anyway, her rooster will come in from outside, go right up onto the sewing desk, and she has a little basket that the rooster will just take a nap while she sews.
Aww.
Can you believe that?
Well, chickens are kind of like, I didn't realize how much of a pet they could really be. I mean, I have a cousin who has chickens, and she's like obsessed with them. Which whatever makes you happy. But, all right, these are gonna work. All right, so I'm gonna press all these just like I showed you, and we're gonna end up with 4 of these. So this is gonna be the boring part. He'll probably edit this part out because you don't really have to watch me press these. But
I'll tell a funny story.
Tell a funny story.
So the farm I work part-time at, they have a turkey. And so every time I drive by the chicken coop, that turkey's in there, and he'll gobble at me.
Aww.
He gobbles at me when I'm going by one direction, and when I come back, he gobbles at me again, and I can even hear him over the loud motor on the Bobcat.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
He is funny.
My daughter's terrified of turkeys. Okay, here's one. Here's a perfect example. Look at that one. Can you see? Let me put this behind it so you can see. Look how that's not meeting. I have to rip that one out. I have to rip that one out. I sewed too far down.
I mean, you can press it into submission.
No, you can't. No.
I mean,
no,
you
no,
could
no,
sew.
no.
You could sew a 1/16 of an inch seam on the other side.
No, we're gonna rip this one out. Okay, then here, let's just do a little discussion about seam rippers. Yeah, to the other side. No, I do have a limit, and that is too far gone. That's too far gone. So this little ball on your seam ripper, and this cracks me up.
It's for decoration.
It's just to keep you from stabbing your finger. No,
it's candy.
what that is when you rip a seam, you should put that part inside where you're ripping so that it doesn't catch the fabric. Because if I do it this way, I'm going to catch the fabric. But if I use that part, so I'm going to loosen the stitch a little bit. Let me just show you. Loosen it up. So I'm opening it up. Okay. And then I put, see how the ball is against the fabric and the point is away from the fabric? Then I can just do like this.
Well, what if my ball's missing on my seam
We'll
ripper?
get you a new seam ripper, dude. It's time. And then I can just pull. See, I can just pull that through. And it's not going to rip my fabric. It's not going to rip. I can hold my thumb over that. It's stabilized, especially because this is bias. I want to kind of be careful. And I want to just rip that right out. And look, I didn't damage my fabric. I didn't do anything.
That looks nice.
Doesn't it look nice? And then I'm going to take and kind of
erase it.
Erase it. That's what these ends are for. I'm going to pull out those little threads. And again, this is bias, so I have to be careful. But see how that just kind of pulls out. Same on this piece. I'm going to pull those out. Rip that like that. And then just a quick little press to get everybody back to where they need to be. All right, now we're going to sew that back on and we're going to get it right this time. And I'll do that again. So there you go. There's a lesson in why sometimes you have to rip it out. Now, I'm going to sew it this time. If I have to rip it out a second time, I will, but I won't do 3. I just won't. I'm sorry.
How bad has your third attempt been?
Pretty bad.
To
sometimes.
where you didn't rip it out, but you left it.
Oh, not that bad. I suppose I would. I mean, if I really had to, I would. I'm kind of a brat about it. I get it. I'm just not a perfectionist.
Have you ever messed the block up so bad that you just had to remake the block, and then you just add that one as a ugly block?
True
you have
confession.
a pile of ugly blocks.
True confession. Here we go. You would bring this up. So let me show you.
I do. I have ugly blocks, but I keep them as reminders.
So this one, this is this very same block, and when I was trying to get ready, I sewed a blue across from a blue and a yellow across from a yellow, and so I tried to salvage it and make it work, and it was pointless. It's like, just pitch it, start over. So there's one right there. Proof is in the pudding. Everybody makes mistakes. Don't beat yourself up. Don't give up. You've made it through every day so far, 100% survival rate. No matter how bad it was, and there's bad days, we all have them. You've survived 100% of the time till now. So just don't let this stop your day. Just throw it out. I'm over it. Cut another piece of fabric.
I like using them as coasters. I have them all over my quilt.
Reminders of how bad things can get, and you don't really care. All right, so now that fixed that.
It's like a memory block.
There you go. You know what? Life's short.
You could put I never thought about this, but I think I'm going to put all my ugly blocks in one quilt, and it'll be like a memory quilt.
Oh, that'd be fun.
Because it has a block from each of the quilts I made.
Yeah, because there's always one block screwed up. Okay, so now I have 4 of these, and I have 4 of these. Let's just show you. I'm not going to take the time. Well, I might need to. So we have 4 of these, and 4 of these, and I have 4 of these. This really comes together fast. 4 of these.
So pretty.
Isn't it pretty?
Man, that's gorgeous.
That gold just pops. And that's not laying flat.
That block layout would be perfect for the tamarack jacket.
Oh, yeah.
For a spring jacket, that nice vibrant yellow.
And then this one goes in the
Gorgeous.
center. Okay? Isn't that fun? It's a beautiful block.
I love it.
Oops, wait a minute. Look what I did. What? And that's why you lay your blocks out. before you sew them together. I always, when I'm ready to sew the next level, I always lay my blocks out and kind of take a minute. The dumbest thing is take a photograph. Sometimes I just take my cell phone and we'll take a picture and click it. Especially when I'm laying out all my rows on a quilt, I'll take a picture. I don't know what it is about a photograph that your eye immediately goes, well, that's wrong. But anyway, so now I'm going to sew these 3 rows together. And that's real simple. You're just going to, and I always just pick them up and I do them a row at a time. I know some people do 2, 2, 2, and then, I don't know. I'm not in a hurry. And I get it, some people are. Now, when I sew this one, here's the 3 I have to sew together. When I sew these together, this one lays on top of this one. I'm not going to sew from this side. I'm going to sew from this side. And you know why? Because I want to be sure I get through that point. If I sew through here, I may or may not find it. But if I sew through here, I will. So, make a peek, make sure I'm right. Yep. And then I'm going to lay this down. Oh, wait, I didn't cut that piece out. Well, looky there. Looky there, looky there. There you go, eyeball 1/4 inch. Okay. Here we go. So I'm going to sew on the side where I can see my point, because I don't want to miss that point. Right like that. See, and it lines up all the way around. I love that. Tells me we are right on the money. Okay. Got some erroneous threads in here. Get out of here. You don't belong there. All right. Now, I'm watching this point right here, and I'm going to sew just right on the edge of that. And I want to sew through the point. I want to be just below the point.
Like a thread's width?
Like a thread's width is all. And I got a suspicion. I think I moved off of it a little bit. Yeah, I did. Well, she may be okay. Let's look and see. Yeah. See there? So there I have it. And it caught the point. See, that's the point. That's the point, to catch the point the right way.
Oh, no, you can use your wooden iron and press it.
And I'll press it, yeah. Oh, look, I didn't cut this one out either. I don't know how I missed this one. He just didn't get cut. Who knows? All right, I'm going to do it again. I'm going to lay this one on top of that one. And then I'm going to come to the back side, and I'm going to make sure I catch that point again.
That's a good tip. You know, that right there is worth the price of admission.
There you
Cappy,
go. There you go.
Because I don't think I was flipping them over.
Well, I could. Okay,
I was redoing some blocks, but I wasn't flipping it over. I think, what did I do though? I did something, but I don't remember if I put a pin in it or I don't remember. Or I peeked. I think I peeked.
Well, I could.
But then that threw the alignment off of my blocks.
I could put a pin.
I wonder what I did.
And watch for, that and be sure I sew through that point.
I like your idea much better though.
And
it's a game changer.
My sewing machine will let me sew on either side. I mean, it's not, it's not, doesn't matter.
Yeah, your sewing machine will let you sew either
care.
direction.
She didn't care. So I always, now you'll see in a minute here, when I get ready to sew the rows together, that one side has a few more points than the other, and so that's where you get, when you start sewing rows, and it's like, well, there's points on both sides. Well, then I kind of choose the side that has the most points. So see, look how that matches. Oh, loving that.
That's money right there.
That's a good piece. Okay, so I'm going to sew the middle row and the bottom row the same way I did that one, and then we'll come back and you can see me sew all 3 rows together. All right, so I've sewn the bottom row and the top row together. Okay, now I'm getting ready to do my middle row. In my middle row, I've got a point here and a point here, and I want those to match. I want those to make that perfect little match in the middle. So what I'm going to do is take a pin, and I'm going to go through this point. Let me trim that up with my fun scissors.
Yeah, I was thinking when you were cutting with those earlier, I was like, man, we should open a quilt shop and call it the Dancing Flamingo.
Oh,
and then
gosh.
But then I was like, oh, wait a minute. I don't think that title will work.
It doesn't have anything to do. Now, there's a bar
Well,
restaurant.
it's because when you cut with them, they dance, right?
do kinda
the flamingos.
There's a really good restaurant down in Cape Coral. Well, it's actually off of Cape Coral always, but called the Lazy Flamingo. One of my favorite places to go. Okay, so I want to match that point and this point. So to do that, I'm going to put my pin through this point, right there. Make sure it comes out where I want it. Right there. So I'm at the point of the point, and then I'm going to match this point at the point of the point.
Does this mean you got to use your fancy U pen?
No, I don't use a U pin on that because now I do.
Is it because it's too thick?
It's no, not because it's too thick, but because it's the points that I really am trying to match. I like the U pins to do where I have two seams coming together, but this I want to do
right,
that.
two seams.
Yeah, this is about the points, and that head of that pin is right where I want to hit. It might show it better. Yeah, it shows it better on this side. That's where I want to hit. So I'm going to run that through my sewing machine, and when I get to that place, because I don't sew over pins, because I'm married to the tech that does the sewing machine repair here, and he gets really angry when you sew over pins because it makes a mess. So I'm going to sew, and then when I get to that point, I'm going to keep my eye on it, and I'm going to pull that pin out, and I'm going to sew right through there. And that will catch that pin. That'll catch that point. Now, in a perfect world, we're going to look good, and that's going to be right. Let's hope. It should.
We're close enough.
We're close enough for kids.
Close enough?
Horseshoes and hand grenades. Yeah, see, look how my points come together? I
Very good.
love it. All right, we're going to do the same thing over here. Same thing over here. I'm going to put through this point. Right there. And I'm going to come through this one here.
I'm going to need an extra one of these blocks. I want to make that pillow, but I want to frame it with fabric, and then this be the body of that pillow for the summer sew-along that we're doing. That'd be so cool.
Oh, yeah.
Wouldn't it be cool?
Be very cool. Okay, so I'm through the point on both sides, and then I just take and push that on through to stabilize it, okay? And that's going to keep my point straight. So this way, you know, I can't see the back point. And yes, I have perfect 1/4 inch seams, but, you know, we all know they aren't always perfect 1/4 inch, and those points sometimes can overlap a little, so. And I get right to it, and I pull that pin out. Perfect. Okay, so then that keeps my points nice and pointy. My point's nice and pointy. Looky there, looky there, looky there. You couldn't have it more better. All right, so when I sew these three together, that's going to make my block. And I think she tells you to go, what does she say? In her directions, she shows you, and this is kind of normal. Yeah, you iron these to the inside, you iron those to the outside, so that they nest together. And I kind of want you to see, so I said together and out. So these go out. So I'm going to do these together. I'm going to iron out. So that's going to go this way. Just like that. Now you're not seeing me use any starches. Typically I'm starching every time I press, I starch. But I didn't bring my starch. So it really firms it up and holds it in place. But I'm going to just lightly starch, just a little bit of starch, and then press that. Same thing here. And it just gets that block nice and crunchy. That iron is hot.
Yeah, that's a hot tamale.
She's a little hot tamale. These are great. I love them.
I mean, you could use that to brown your
Look how
flour
pretty
tortilla.
those are. Okay, and then this one, she goes in.
Like,
Now this is, yeah, those go in. And there's a lot of bulk in that. This corner here is really bulky. I don't even know pressing it open is going to get rid of some
I think
of
you
that
need a
bulk.
rawhide mallet.
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, I've hammered. You're saying that in jest, but you know, you can hammer that and get it really flat.
I've done that too.
Yeah, you get some bulky seams. Your long arm person will appreciate that. All right, So now I'm going to sew just like this. Now this is where I get the pins out. So I have my little pin cushion here, and I've just got a few pins. I got a dozen pin cushions at home. But what I'm going to do is, because this one's folded that way and this one's folded that way, is I'm going to nest those seams. And this is where I'm going to use, let's trim it up. Trim it up.
U-pins? Are you going to use the U-pin?
I'm going to use the U-pin.
Oh, U-pin.
U-pins. I love my U-pins for this exact purpose.
I didn't know anything about U-pins until I started working here.
Yeah, they're a great little thing. So this is a little, if you can see, it's like a U-turn.
Yep.
It's got a little bump in it. Now, when I was talking about sewing to the points, there's one point on this side, but there's 3 points on this side. So you know which side I'm going to sew from.
The one with the 3 points.
The one with the 3 points. So when I put my U-pin in, there's a little, see how it's curved up? You're going to see why here in a minute. I care about that. So I'm going to match that seam right there because they'll nest together. And then I put my U-pin on either side of that seam. So now there's 2 things going on. The fabrics are like that because they nest, and the U-pin is holding both sides nice and flat. And then I'm going to come down here, and that's going to match, so we're good. I'm not going to do anything there. But here, I'm going to do the same trick I did before. I'm going to make a point. I'm going to find my point there, and I'm going to straighten that out. Okay? So I'm using U-pins. I'm using both. And then again, I'm going to join this little seam right here. Perfect. And the thread is sticking out. And I'm going to take my U-pin and I'm going to put it on either side. And I don't have to match a point here or match a point here because the point's only on this side. So now when I sew this in, here we go. So I'm going to watch, and I'm going to sew just at the very, like a thread width, the bottom of that. Now when I get to here, here's my stylist trick. I sew, because I don't sew over it, I get just as close as I can, and then look. I pull it out using the point of my stylus to get that out of there. And then I go through here. I'm going to pull the head on this one because I don't have a U-pin. And I get right up to that point and I pull this out.
Look at that. You're using your other hand.
I'm using my other finger hand. And then I go through that point. There we go.
You know all these great tips? This tutorial is almost paid for itself.
Yeah. Yeah, because it was free when you bought the kit with us. And for anybody else who's making the vlog. Okay. So now you can see my seams match here, my seams match here. Look how my points match. That's what you want. I love that it happened. If it didn't, I could rip it out twice. Third time, no. But that's a pretty block. I'm going to do the same procedure to sew this side on here. And then when you get done, I'm going to have this. Whoop!
Done.
Just like when, you know, they pull it out of the oven. There she is. And you can see this one's crisper because I've used thing. I'm then going to square the block up. I have a big square. This is a 12.5-inch squared up block. I'm going to lay that on top of this block and I'm going to trim it to match the size that she tells me. If I put this on here and it's a 1/2 inch, you know, or a 1/2 inch, or even a 1/4 of an inch off, I'm probably going to go, okay, wait a minute, what have I done in this block to make it wrong? It can be my seams are too deep in here when you sew the block together finally. Because I've checked each block as I went, chances are pretty good that's not the problem. If they end up really out of whack, it's usually when you sew these long seams that you get the wrong distance. And those, I'll rip that out and sew that back in if I need to. If it's a 16th, I'm not going to sweat a 16th. I can usually make a 16th work. But there you go. There's your block for this month. So that is the block called Dewdrops, like the dewdrop in. You make 4 of these. And like I said, they're pretty easy because you're repeating this same block several times. You've done this one before. Don't be shy. Don't be afraid. Do it because it's fun. Don't do it because you're trying to be perfect, because The only perfect thing ever existed hung on a cross, and I don't want that job. So I hope you're having a fun stitching time. If you've got any questions, don't hesitate to give us a call. We'll try and help you. And it's a good stitching day when I get to finish a block. So I'm going to go make 3 more. Well, 2 more. This one's almost done, so I guess I have to make 2 more and I'm done. So we'll see you next month when we're ready for block. It'll be block 5. Gosh, we'll be almost halfway. Have a great day. Bye-bye.